I should have seen the signs earlier. I guess that's what people always say when they look back on the messes in their lives, right? You see the cracks in hindsight, the little things that didn't add up, but at the time you brush it off as nothing. I sure as hell did. I never thought I'd be that guy, the one who gets cheated on by his own damn wife. It all started that one evening, a night like any other, or so I thought. Melanie was in the shower, and I was just hanging around, scrolling through my phone, catching up on the sports highlights I missed. Her phone was on the dresser, buzzing with a notification every now and then. At first, I didn't pay much attention. Why would I? We trusted each other, or so I believed. But then a message popped up on her screen that made me stop dead in my tracks. "Can't wait to see you." That's all it said, but it was enough to make my heart drop into my stomach. It wasn't the words, necessarily. It was the context. I mean, who the hell was she so eager to see? My curiosity quickly turned into suspicion. Before I knew it, my hands were already picking up her phone, my thumbs swiping up on the screen like a reflex. My head was screaming at me to stop, but I couldn't. I had to know. And what I found, it shattered me. Right there, in plain sight, was the thread of a conversation with some guy named Travis. At first, it seemed innocent enough, but I kept scrolling. The messages got more personal, more explicit. And then boom, a picture. You can guess what it was. It wasn't just a "can't wait to see you" anymore. It was "can't wait to see you naked. Can't wait to touch you again." That night was so hot. It felt like my whole world just caved in. You know that feeling? When your stomach twists and you feel like you're about to be sick, but you're frozen, unable to do a damn thing. That's exactly how I felt, staring at that screen, reading how my wife, my Melanie, was sexting another man. A stranger, a fucking Travis. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so loud, I swear it was echoing in the room. I knew I needed proof because the minute I confront her, she'd probably lie, twist the whole thing around. So I started taking screenshots, my fingers fumbling on her phone as I hurried to capture every single dirty detail, every "I miss you" and "I want you." Once I had enough, I quickly transferred Travis's profile info to my phone. I had no clue what I was going to do with it just yet, but one thing was for sure. I wasn't going to let this slide. With the adrenaline pumping through my veins, I marched straight to the bathroom. The steam was thick in the air, and Melanie was humming to some song while washing her hair. It made my blood boil even more. How could she be so carefree when she'd just destroyed our marriage? I didn't even say a word. I just threw her phone in her direction. It hit the floor with a loud thud, and she flinched, eyes wide with confusion. "What the hell, John?" She yelped, trying to cover herself up with the shower curtain, like that was the real issue right now. But I wasn't going to let her play innocent. Not this time. "Who the fuck is Travis?" I shouted, my voice echoing off the tiled walls. I could see the panic wash over her face instantly. You know that look people get when they're cornered, caught red-handed? "Yeah, that one." She stammered, trying to play dumb, but she knew she was done for. What are you talking about?" She stuttered, her eyes darting around like she was searching for an escape. "Don't lie to me, Mel." I barked, holding up my phone, the screenshots right there on the screen for her to see. I saw everything. The messages, the pictures, everything. Her face went pale as the reality of what I knew sank in. She started shaking her head, like she could somehow make it all go away by denying it. But then she broke down, sobbing right there in the shower, water still pouring down on her like some dramatic scene out of a movie. "I'm sorry," she cried out. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "Didn't mean for it to happen?" I snapped back, incredulous. "So what? He accidentally sent you a dick pic? You accidentally spread your legs for him? Don't fucking insult me, Mel." She tried to explain, to justify what she did. It was just the way he talked to me," she said, tears mixing with the water on her face. "He made me feel sexy. I couldn't help it when he sent that photo. I felt wanted, John. Wanted." I practically screamed, my voice cracking with anger. "You're my wife. I wanted you. I've always wanted you. And you threw that all away for some loser who can't even keep it in his pants." I couldn't listen to her excuses anymore. It all felt like bullshit, like she was just trying to put the blame anywhere but on herself. I couldn't even look at her crying, her naked, wet, pathetic self. So I walked out. I slammed that door so hard the frame rattled, and I just left. Left her there, left the house, left everything. After walking out that night, I had no idea where to go. I just knew I couldn't stay in that house a second longer. The air felt toxic, heavy with betrayal. I needed to clear my head, but that wasn't going to happen at home. Not with her there. So, I ended up at O'Malley's, my favorite bar. You know, the kind of place you go to escape when life is crap. A dark, wooden dive where the bartender knows your name and leaves you alone if you just want to sit there and drink in silence. That was exactly what I needed. I stumbled in, and it was like any other night at O'Malley's. Some local band was playing covers in the corner. The smell of stale beer hung in the air, and the regulars were crowded around the pool table, cursing about missed shots. But none of that mattered. I just wanted to drown everything out. I ordered the strongest pint they had, some kind of IPA that I didn't even like, and started chugging like my life depended on it. With every sip, I tried to process what the hell had just happened. How did I get here? Was I that oblivious? I mean, Mel and I had our ups and downs, sure, but I never thought she'd actually do this. The worst part was, as much as I hated her at that moment, there was still a part of me that didn't want to believe it, that hoped it was some big misunderstanding, some sick joke that I'd wake up from. But then I'd see those damn screenshots in my head again, and the anger would just bubble right back up. I couldn't sit there stewing alone any longer, so I pulled out my phone and texted Dave. "You up for a drink?" I knew I could count on him to drop whatever he was doing. Dave's the kind of guy who'd be there at 2 a.m. if you called him in the middle of a breakdown. And trust me, I was on the brink of one. 15 minutes later, Dave walked in, his leather jacket slung over his shoulder like he owned the place. He could tell by my face that something was seriously wrong. "Shit, man, you look like hell," he said as he slid into the booth across from me. "Yeah, well, you won't believe the day I've had." I muttered, and before I knew it, the words started pouring out of me. Everything. I showed him Travis's profile, swiped through the filthy messages, and vented every ounce of anger, betrayal, and confusion that was eating me alive. It felt like ripping off a Band-Aid, showing someone else the wound, hoping they'd understand just how deep it went. Dave sat there, stone-faced as always, his eyes focused on my phone screen like he was analyzing a case. "This guy's a piece of shit," he finally said, and those words felt like a relief. It was like he was saying what I needed to hear, validating all that rage that was boiling inside me. "You're not staying with her? Are you? I mean, after this? 'Cause if you are, you're crazier than I thought." Honestly, man, I don't know. And that was the truth. My head was all over the place. Part of me wanted to walk away and never look back, but another part, the part that remembered our wedding, our life together, the plans we'd made, wanted to fix things, to understand why she did this and make it right. It's stupid, I know, but when you've spent years with someone, you don't just walk away in an instant. Dave shook his head, his expression hardening. "Look, I don't know what your plans are, but that woman cheated on you. Plain and simple. That's not something you can forgive, bro. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. You get me? And don't even think about sticking around for closure or some crap like that. It'll just make you weaker." I downed my beer in one gulp, the bitterness burning my throat. Yeah, I get it. And deep down, I knew he was right. But knowing something is one thing. Doing it is another. The thought of walking away from everything I'd built with Melanie felt like tearing my own skin off. Dave leaned back, tapping his fingers against the glass of his own drink, and then he said something that flipped a switch in me. "Let me handle this guy," he offered, his voice low and almost dangerous. "You know, I've got my ways. I'll dig up everything on this asshole, find out who he really is. You want to hurt him? Leave it to me." Now, Dave's got this reputation. He's always been the guy you go to when you need dirt on someone. His investigative skills, as he called them, were unmatched. And I'll be honest, I wanted to know who Travis was, where he worked, lived, who else he might have screwed over. But more than that, I wanted to make sure this bastard would regret the day he ever laid eyes on my wife. "Yeah, do it," I said, my voice steady but my insides trembling. It felt like I was signing off on something big, something dangerous, but I didn't care. I needed to channel this anger somewhere, and if that meant tracking this piece of shit down, then so be it. We made a plan to meet again in a few days, once Dave had done his research. I left the bar feeling not better, but like I had a purpose now, like there was a way forward. When I got back to the house, the lights were still on. Mel was waiting for me. Her face was red and swollen from crying. And the minute she saw me walk through the door, she rushed over, throwing herself at my feet. "John, please, please, just listen to me," she sobbed, clutching at my pants. "It was a mistake, a stupid, stupid mistake. I swear to God, it didn't mean anything. Please, let's talk, let's fix this." I just stood there, staring down at her. I used to love those eyes, green, soft, always sparkling when she laughed. Now all I saw was betrayal. She kept talking, pleading for forgiveness, saying it was a one-time thing, swearing on everything she held dear that it would never happen again. But I wasn't in the mood to hear any of it. Not tonight. Not ever, maybe. Wordlessly, I pushed past her, grabbing a blanket and pillow from the closet. The couch became my bed that night. And for the first time in years, we didn't sleep under the same roof, at least not together. I could hear her crying from the bedroom, sobbing like she was the victim in all this. It was pathetic, and for the first time, I didn't care. Let her cry. Let her wallow in the mess she made. And me? I lay there on the couch, staring at the ceiling until dawn, running through every moment of our marriage, every laugh, every fight, every night we held each other close, wondering if it had all been a lie. The morning after that hellish night was awkward, to say the least. I barely got any sleep on that lumpy couch, and my head was pounding like I'd been in a bar fight, though the battle had all been inside me. I didn't know how to face the day, much less Melanie. But then, like she always did, she tried to pretend everything could be fixed with a little breakfast and sweet talk. I was still pretending to be asleep when she tiptoed over to me, balancing a steaming mug of coffee in one hand and a pleading expression on her face. "Hey," she whispered, trying to sound soft and loving like the night before never happened. "I made you coffee, just the way you like it." She crouched down next to the couch, her eyes puffy and red from crying all night, like mine were any better. I sat up, took the coffee, and just stared at her. There was something so twisted about the whole scene, like she thought coffee was some sort of peace offering, like it could somehow make up for what she'd done. "Thanks," I muttered, the word heavy with all the unspoken anger and betrayal swirling in my chest. "John, please," she said, her voice cracking as she spoke. "I know you're hurting, but I meant it when I said I want to make things right. I will do anything to make this better." She was pleading, practically on her knees, reaching out to touch my hand. "Please give me a chance. I love you. I'm so sorry." And that's when it hit me, a flash of clarity through all the confusion and chaos. If she was willing to do anything to make things right, then maybe I could use that to my advantage. Maybe I could give her just enough hope to play along, to lower her guard while I figured out exactly how I wanted to make her pay for what she did. I knew one thing for sure. Forgiveness wasn't on the table. Not by a long shot. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to keep my expression neutral. "I don't know, Mel," I said slowly, like I was thinking it over. "You really hurt me. You know that, right? You tore everything apart." I know," she said quickly, nodding frantically, like a kid desperate for approval. "And I hate myself for it. But maybe we can work on things? I promise I'll do whatever it takes, anything you want. Just please don't give up on us." I let out a sigh, one that I hoped sounded genuine, and gave her a long, hard look. "All right," I finally said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll think about it, but don't expect me to just forget what you did, okay? It's going to take a lot to even consider forgiving you." Her face lit up like I just handed her a second chance at life. She practically threw herself at me, hugging me tightly, the smell of her shampoo filling my nose, an all-too-familiar scent that felt foreign now. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she mumbled into my chest, her arms wrapped around me like a vice. I had to fight the urge to push her away. Instead, I let her cling to me, let her believe that her pathetic apology meant something, all while my mind was racing with ideas on how I could turn this to my advantage. Yeah, we'll see," I said, pushing her off gently and standing up. "I've got to get to work." The relief in her eyes was almost laughable, like she'd just dodged a bullet. And maybe she had for now, but I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I got ready as quickly as I could, wanting to get out of the house before the fake truce became too much to bear. I needed space, time to think, Melanie stayed in the kitchen, making small talk, asking if I wanted breakfast or she should pack me a lunch like she used to do when we were newlyweds. It was almost pathetic how desperate she was to go back to how things were. I couldn't stomach the sight of her, so I grabbed my keys, muttered a quick, "I'll see you later," and left before she could push any harder. All day at work, I could barely focus. The office felt like a prison, my cubicle walls closing in around me as I tried to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. But the hours dragged on, and all I could think about was meeting Dave later that evening. He was the only one who knew what had happened, and I needed to hear what he'd found out about Travis. I wanted to see that bastard's face, know where he worked, who he was, and how I could make his life hell. The evening finally rolled around, and I met Dave at a diner we always went to after work, a greasy little place with chipped vinyl seats and the best burgers in town. He was already waiting for me when I got there, sipping on a Coke, his eyes sharp and focused like he was ready to go to war for me. "So," I asked as I slid into the booth, "what did you find?" Dave grinned, that sly, satisfied grin he always got when he was about to deliver some juicy dirt. "Oh, I found everything," he said, leaning in closer. "Travis is a real piece of work. Married, 2 kids, lives in a nice little house in the suburbs. Works as a project manager at some mid-level tech company downtown. Nothing too flashy, but comfortable." I clenched my fists under the table. Married? Kids? The hypocrisy made me sick. This guy was cheating on his wife while messing around with mine, all while playing the role of a family man? It was disgusting. "That's not all," Dave continued. "I may have tipped off some of my associates about him. Just enough to get them interested in the situation. They're not exactly the type to let things slide when a friend's been screwed over, if you catch my drift." I nodded slowly, processing what he was saying. Dave's associates were a rough crowd, guys you didn't want to mess with. But right now, I didn't care. If they could help me take Travis down, then I was all in. "So, what's the plan?" I asked, my voice low. "We meet up tomorrow," Dave said, leaning back and taking a long sip of his drink. "We'll confront him. Make sure he knows he fucked with the wrong people. And if things get a little physical, well, that's just the price he's going to pay for messing with another man's wife." I nodded, feeling a rush of adrenaline and anger pulse through me. The thought of confronting Travis, of seeing the fear on his face when he realized he'd screwed up, made my blood race. This was it. This was how I'd start to take control back. "All right," I said, "let's do it." We made our plans, going over the details until they were ironclad. And as I sat there, plotting out the next moves with Dave, I felt the tiniest bit of peace. For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt like I was finally doing something. Not just sitting there, not just letting things happen to me, but actually taking action. And I knew one thing for sure. Tomorrow was going to be a day Travis would never forget. When I finally got home, Melanie was waiting for me like a loyal puppy, eyes wide with anticipation. "How was work?" she asked, her voice careful, like she was testing the waters. I just shrugged, giving her a non-committal "fine," and went straight to the couch again, making it clear that the bed wasn't an option. She didn't push me that night, didn't cry or beg like she did before. She just slinked off to the bedroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the sense that things were about to change. And not in a way she was going to like. The next morning was tense from the moment I opened my eyes. It wasn't just the uneasy feeling of what lay ahead, but the awareness of every minute detail around me. The way Melanie moved about the kitchen quietly, as if afraid to make a sound, the way she kept glancing at me like she was trying to read my mind. She had no idea what was going on in my head, and that was exactly how I wanted it. I played my role, keeping my voice even, my face blank. Every word I said felt like it had to be measured, like one wrong move would give away the whole act. "I'm heading out early today," I told her as I grabbed my keys. "Got some things to take care of." "John," she said softly, her voice trembling just enough to remind me of why we were even here. Are you thinking about things? About us?" I paused, taking a deep breath before answering. "Yeah, Mel," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I'm thinking about it." She seemed to take that as a good sign, her face relaxing just a bit, like she believed there was hope. And maybe that was part of the satisfaction I felt, letting her think she was in control when really she was at my mercy. The hours leading up to meeting Dave were a blur. It's funny how time feels like it speeds up and slows down all at once. 1 minute it felt like the clock wasn't moving. The next, I was on my way to meet him, my stomach churning with anticipation. When I pulled up to the diner, Dave was already outside, leaning against his car like he had all the time in the world. But I could see it in his eyes. The same readiness, the same resolve. "You ready?" he asked, tossing me a mask, the black fabric feeling heavy in my hand. "Yeah, let's do this," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. We drove together in silence, both of us knowing this wasn't the time for jokes or small talk. The route to the parking lot felt like a lifetime, every turn heightening the tension until my hands were gripping the wheel, so tight my knuckles turned white. This wasn't just about some guy anymore. This was about taking a stand, making sure that what Melanie did wouldn't just fade into the background of our lives like a bad memory. When we finally got there, I could see them, Dave's associates, standing in a half-circle near the back of the lot. And there in the middle was Travis. He looked uneasy, like he knew something was off but couldn't quite place it. The tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. We stepped out of the car, pulling on our masks, and walked up to the group. Travis's eyes flickered over me, and I could see the moment he started to connect the dots, his expression shifting from confusion to fear. "Look, man, if this is about something at work," or he began, but his voice was already shaking. "No, Travis," I said, my voice sharp and clear. "This isn't about work. This is about you, and about my wife." I'll spare you the details of what happened next, but let's just say Travis got a very clear message. He learned exactly who I was, who Melanie was, and what happens when you mess with another man's life. There were words exchanged, promises made, and by the time it was over, Travis was left with a deep understanding that he'd never see her, or any other man's wife, the same way again. When it was done, I took a step back, catching my breath. The adrenaline, the anger, the raw power of it all. It was like a wave crashing over me. Dave gave me a nod, the unspoken acknowledgement that it was handled, that we'd done what needed to be done. "Let's go," Dave said, and we walked back to the car, leaving Travis to think long and hard about his life choices. The ride home was different. There was no going back from what had happened today, and I didn't want to. I felt lighter somehow, like the weight of my rage had been lifted, at least for the moment. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be about Travis anymore. No, the next step was Melanie, and that was a whole different game. By the time I got back to the house, it was well past dark. Melanie was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone, probably trying to distract herself from the reality of what our life had become. The second she saw me, she jumped up, eyes wide with worry. "John, I was so worried." "You didn't answer your phone all day," she said, rushing over to me. Are you okay? Did you think more about?" "Yeah, Mel, I did," I said, keeping my face unreadable. "But right now, I just want to take a shower and go to bed, okay?" She bit her lip, nodding like she was desperate to hold on to whatever thin thread of hope she thought she had. Of course. I'll let you rest." I didn't say anything else, just headed to the bathroom and turned on the shower, letting the hot water wash over me. It was like I needed to scrub away everything that had happened, every thought, every second of that day, so I could focus on what came next. And that, right there, under the water, was when I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The days after confronting Travis felt like a slow burn. At home, I kept my mask on, pretending I was thinking about giving Melanie a second chance. She was trying hard to be the perfect wife, cooking meals, doing anything to make me comfortable. I let her keep the hope alive, let her believe that maybe, just maybe, we could work things out. Little did she know, I was already moving forward with my real plan. It wasn't hard to see how desperate she was. Every morning, she'd hand me a cup of coffee with this hopeful smile, and every night she'd offer to watch TV together, trying to be close to me. I could see the fear in her eyes, the worry that at any second I might tell her it was over. But I didn't. I needed her to think she was winning me back. Finally, after days of letting her grovel, I planted the idea that would set the next phase in motion. "Maybe we could start over," I said one night, keeping my tone cautious like I was thinking out loud. "I don't know, Mel. I'm not making any promises, but maybe." Her reaction was instant. She reached out and grabbed my hand, squeezing it like it was her lifeline. Yes, John, please. I'll do anything. I mean it. Just tell me what you want, whatever it takes. Okay, I said slowly, pretending to think. Let's try to have a nice night together. Like old times. Dinner, wine, just being together. She jumped at the idea, eager to set everything up. That night, she went all out, cooked a full meal, candles on the table, and opened a bottle of wine, just like I'd asked. It was almost pitiful how hard she was trying. I played my part well, smiling when she poured me another glass, making light conversation, acting like I was remembering the good times. The wine flowed, and so did our conversation. We talked like we hadn't in weeks, about our favorite trips, our jokes, the little memories that had built our life together. Melanie's eyes were bright, hopeful, and she reached across the table to hold my hand, squeezing it tight as she said, "I love you, John. I'm so sorry for everything. I know I messed up, but I swear we can be happy again." I took a deep breath, pretending to be moved. "Yeah, maybe we can," I said softly, and I knew that was all she needed to hear. From that moment, I let the evening unfold the way she wanted it to. She leaned in to kiss me, and I kissed her back like I meant it. We moved upstairs, and one thing led to another. The sex was intense, full of all the pent-up anger, the tension, and whatever mix of emotions we were pretending to share. I wasn't thinking about forgiveness. I was thinking about my plan. And as things heated up, I knew exactly when to make my move. "Hey, Mel," I whispered, keeping my voice playful as I held her close. "I want to ask you something. A favor." "What is it?" she asked, her voice soft, and I could tell she was willing to do whatever it took. "I want you to dance for me," I said, running my fingers down her arm. "You know, a sexy dance, and I want to record it, just for us." She hesitated, her eyes searching mine. "Dance? John, I don't know, that feels... recording it. Come on," I said, giving her a reassuring smile. "You said you'd do anything, right? I just want something to remember tonight by. A fresh start, something for just you and me." There was a moment where I thought she might say no, but then she nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered, "if it'll make you happy." I grabbed my phone and hit record, watching as she stood up and started moving, her body swaying to some imagined beat. She tried to make it look sensual, putting on a show like she really believed it would make me forgive her. I kept my eyes locked on her, encouraging her with nods and smiles, letting her think she was doing everything right. And when the dance was done, I had exactly what I needed, a video that would be impossible for her to deny. The next morning, I was up early. I didn't wake her, didn't say a word. I just got dressed, grabbed my phone, and left. Instead of heading to work, I drove straight to a lawyer's office. The meeting was quick, a few signatures, some legal advice, and I walked out with the divorce papers in my hands. The final blow was ready. By the time I got home, Melanie was in full good wife mode, bustling around the kitchen, making breakfast, probably imagining how our evening together had saved our marriage. The smell of bacon filled the air, and she turned to me with that eager smile. "Hey, babe," she said brightly. "I thought maybe we could have breakfast together. I made your favorite." I walked over to the dining table and dropped the stack of papers in front of her. "Read these," I said flatly. She looked at the papers, then back at me, her smile faltering. What is this?" she asked, picking up the stack and flipping through it. Her face went pale as she realized what she was holding. "John, these are divorce papers." "Yeah," I said, crossing my arms. "I'm done pretending, Mel. Sign them." Her face crumpled, and she dropped the papers like they were poison. "John, no, please," she cried, her voice rising in panic. "You can't do this. We were doing better last night." "Last night was nothing," I interrupted, my voice ice cold. "You think one night makes up for what you did? You think I can just forget that you cheated, that you lied to me? You deserve this, Melanie. Every bit of it." She broke down, shouting, sobbing, calling me cruel, heartless, telling me I was a fool to throw away our life together. But I'd heard enough. I turned my back on her and walked out, leaving her with nothing but those papers and the mess she'd made of our marriage. I woke up the next day feeling oddly calm, almost like a burden had been lifted. The divorce papers were in Melanie's hands, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the whole thing came crashing down. But there was one last part of my plan that needed to be set into motion The part that would make sure Melanie felt the consequences of her actions just as deeply as I had. I'd spent the night at Dave's place after throwing the papers in her face. I needed distance from the chaos I'd left behind. But now, with a clear head and the final phase in front of me, I was ready to do what needed to be done. That morning, I went through the contacts in my phone, the friends we shared, the group chats we were both a part of, the acquaintances who knew us as a couple but would never expect what was about to hit their inbox. And one by one, I sent the video. Melanie's dance, that desperate attempt to win back my love, was now on its way to the people who would make sure it got the attention it deserved. The subject line? Guess what my wife does when I'm not around? Within hours, the response was electric. In today's world, word travels fast, and shame travels faster. Once the video was out, it spread like wildfire. The messages started pouring in. Some were from old friends, shocked and disgusted by what they saw. Others from people I barely knew, but who had already heard the news. And I knew it wouldn't take long for it to circle back to Melanie herself. That evening, I came back to the house one last time. The place was a mess. Pillows thrown on the floor, dishes still in the sink. Melanie sat on the couch, clutching her phone, her face a mix of anger, fear, and devastation. "What did you do?" she screamed the second I walked through the door. "You sent that video? You sick bastard. How could you?" I stood there, watching her unravel, knowing she'd finally realized what it felt like to have her world turned upside down. "You did this to yourself, Mel," I said calmly, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. "You made your choices. I'm just making sure everyone knows who you really are." She lunged at me, her hands shaking with rage, tears running down her face as she tried to hit me. "You ruined my life," she cried, her voice breaking. "I trusted you, and I trusted you," I said, catching her wrists and pushing her away. "Now look where we are." She was hysterical, and I knew it was only a matter of time before she did what I expected. Call the police, try to accuse me of sharing that video. And that's exactly what she did. But I was one step ahead. Right after sending the video, I ditched the phone, tossed it in a dumpster, and filed a police report saying it was stolen. I knew the system well enough to know how to protect myself. When the authorities finally came knocking, all I had to do was show them my report and let them connect the dots that led nowhere. Melanie tried to fight it, of course, telling the cops I was behind everything, that I deliberately humiliated her. But without the phone, without proof, her claims fell apart. She was left with nothing but the reality of what she'd done and the fallout of her betrayal. The social shaming was relentless. Mutual friends cut her off, the gossip spread like wildfire, and her life in our town became unbearable. Eventually, she was forced to sell our house and whatever else she could to scrape together some semblance of a fresh start. She moved away, far from the whispers and side eyes, far from the place where everyone knew her story. And in a way, that was her real punishment, knowing that wherever she went, she'd always be running from what she'd done. The divorce finalized not long after. She signed the papers, and with that, the last thread that bound us together was severed. And as I watched her walk away, I felt nothing but clarity, a cold, clean break from the woman who'd torn our lives apart. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend it was easy to move on. It wasn't. There were nights when I lay awake, wondering how the hell we'd ended up here, how someone I'd trusted with my whole life could turn into a stranger. But in the end, I didn't need a therapist. I didn't need some shrink to tell me how to process my anger or grief. I did what I had to do, and I can live with that. And maybe that's what makes this story different. It's not about forgiveness or finding closure or learning to let go. It's about facing what was done to me and dealing with it my way. The world isn't black and white, and sometimes revenge is the only thing that makes sense. I know some people will judge me for what I did. Some will say I went too far. But I ask you, what would you have done in my place?